Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to apologize for not being there in person with you, but just a few days ago, I realized that my American visa has expired. Second of all, I would like to express that for me, it is a tremendous privilege to share the table with my friends of the Academy Advisory Group of the International Bar Association in such a magnificent venue, the University of Harvard. Finally, I would like to thank Elena for this initiative. During the following 10 minutes, I will try to analyze the connections between three issues. First, the goal of net zero emissions in 2050. Second, the economic integration of North American region. And finally, the principle of climatic solidarity. Mexico, Canada, and the USA have several points in common, but they also have tremendous differences. A regional commercial agreement has linked them since 1994. The commercial treaty has delivered good results for all the partners, and nowadays the North American region is one of the most dynamic trading blocs in the world. However, the region is also one of the most significant contributors to climate change. In 2021, the United States of America ranked second in CO2 emissions. Canada ranked 11 and Mexico ranked 15. In light of the above, for the world to achieve the goal of net zero emissions by 2050, the actions taken by the North American region are crucial. These actions must be consistent with the principles of the trade agreement so as not to generate distortions in trade and investment between the three countries. In the same vein, the actions adopted to achieve the goal of net zero emissions must also consider that Mexico does not have the same capacity to respond to climate change and requires the solidarity of Canada and the United States. However, the North American region must also be solidary with the rest of the international community. With this background, let's move to the second part of my presentation. Since adopting the Paris Agreement, the North American region has made at least two attempts to define a regional climate change policy. The first attempt was the adoption of the North American Climate, Clean Energy, and Environmental Partnership Action Plan of 2016. Unfortunately, this plan did not deliver good results due to the changes in the US and Mexico's public policies. The second attempt was the renegotiation of NAFTA. As a result of this renegotiation, a new commercial agreement was adopted, the USMCA. This new agreement includes a comprehensive chapter on environmental matters, but unfortunately nothing about climate change. These two initiatives failed because of a lack of solidarity. Mexico and the US changed their national policies on energy and climate change without the consensus of Canada. At the national level, Canada and the USA have taken some steps toward achieving the net zero emissions goal, passing important pieces of legislation, particularly after Joe Biden assumed the presidency of the USA. Unlike the US and Canada, Mexico has not passed yet any law adopting the goal of zero emissions for 2050. This failure could mean two things. First, Mexico's policies are distorting the rules that governs the free trade agreement. Or two, Mexico's policies are not in harmony with Canada and USA. In 2021, Canada passed the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act, and in 2022, the US government approved the Inflation Reduction Act. In both cases, the laws establish financial and legal mechanisms to achieve the ambition of net zero. In contrast, even when Mexico passed the General Climate Change Act and the Law for Energy Transition, the climate change policy is still very unclear. Transitory provisions of the Energy Transition Law assert that Mexico can only achieve its transition goal if any other country provides financial support. In fact, since 2018, when a new government took the chair in Mexico, it can be observed that there has been a gradual substitution of clean energies for carbon-based sources of electricity. Recently, Canada and the US called the government of Mexico for consultations in the arena of USMCA. They consider that few aspects of the Mexican energy policy challenge the commercial trade rules. In contrast, the Mexican government states that based on the national sovereignty principle, it can define its own climate change policy and that the commercial treaty cannot oblige it to take a different path. Conflicts like this could complicate the economic regional integration and make a regional climate change response impossible. So, it is necessary to define a roadmap to design a regional net zero emissions policy by 2050 in the North American region. Next year, Mexico, Canada, and the USA governments will start revising the USMCA. This process is an excellent opportunity for the three countries to establish the basis for designing a regional climate change policy. Unlike the Paris Agreement, which is an international soft law instrument, the USMCA has enough binding force to oblige commercial partners to adopt a regional climate change policy. In the USMCA structure, there is not a supranational authority, but for instance, in the case of Mexico, this commercial treaty is hierarchically at the same level as the Constitution. Therefore, it is possible that, due to the USMCA renegotiation, the environmental chapter is modified to establish the basis for the North American region net zero emissions policy. Another possibility is to adopt a side agreement on net zero emissions, as it happened in 1994 with the side agreement of NAFTA on environmental matters. In both cases, the Mexican government would be obliged to harmonize its regulations with those from Canada and USA. But in response, Mexico could negotiate with Canada and US governments for the necessary financial and technical support to design and apply such a policy. Finally, in light of my analysis, I would like to point out a couple of conclusions. First, advancing in regional solidarity for net zero requires a regional strategy and legal framework with clear and comprehensive natural resource and environmental provisions on net zero that promotes regional knowledge sharing, trade cooperation, and collective regional action. Second, Mexico could benefit from its partnership with Canada and the USA. Otherwise, Mexico cannot achieve the voluntary commitments assumed in its national determined contribution, and such non-compliance could affect the future of the regional integration with Canada and the USA. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will be happy answering your questions.